Okay, picture this. It's May 23rd, 2025, a courtroom in Kolkata. You can almost feel that tension in the air, right? Everyone's waiting for this verdict in a really sensitive POCSO case.
Mm-hmm.
You expect the usual, conviction, maybe some arguments, then the sentence. But this was something else entirely, like a twist straight out of a movie script almost.
Yeah, it really was. And this one case, originating right there in West Bengal, it sort of forces us to grapple with just how complex the Protection of Children from Sexual Offenses Act, POCSO, can be in practice.
Exactly.
We're not just looking at what happened, but really digging into the why behind the Supreme Court's final decision and, what it means more broadly.
Right. So let's rewind a bit. Go back to 2018. You have a 14-year-old girl who leaves home. She goes to live with a 25-year-old man. Fast forward 7 years to 2025. They've evolved. They're married now. They have a child together. It sounds almost settled.
Then I said on the surface, yeah. But there's a huge catch.
The catch. The man had already been convicted years before by a special POCSO court. Aggravated sexual assault under Section 6. That's serious. Carries a hefty minimum sentence, usually.
Usually, yes. A conviction seemed almost locked in, given how strict POCSO is designed to be. But then 2023 happens. The Calcutta High Court completely overturns that conviction.
Throws a real curveball.
A massive one. And their reasoning. They said the relationship was consensual, plus they made some, pretty eyebrow-raising comments about adolescent girls and sexual urges.
Yeah, those comments definitely stood out, and not in a good way. It really makes you question how consent even works legally when a minor is involved, especially over time like this.
Absolutely. And that high court decision, it clearly didn't sit right with the Supreme Court either.
No, it didn't. So August 20th, 2024, the Supreme Court steps in. They take what's called suo motu cognizance, basically. They initiate the review themselves because they see a major issue.
They see something fundamental is wrong.
Exactly. They reverse the high court's decision, reinstate the original conviction. Okay, so far so good, maybe. But here's the real head-scratcher. No prison sentence.
None.
Convicted under a very strict law, but no jail time. That's the puzzle we really need to unpack in this deep dive.
It really is. What possibly led the highest court in the land to uphold a conviction but then withhold the sentence? That's what we need to understand. The legal thinking, the human factors, and, the potential ripple effects for POCSO itself.
So, yeah, the million-dollar question, why no jail time? It's really the heart of it all, isn't it?
It is. And the answer seems to lie partly in a pretty unique power the Supreme Court has under Article 142 of the Constitution.
Article 142, that's the Complete Justice Clause, right?
Exactly. It lets the court go beyond the strict letter of the law sometimes to achieve what it sees as true justice in a specific, often exceptional situation. It's not used lightly.
Okay, so what made this case exceptional enough for Article 142?
Well, a huge factor, it seems, was the victim's own perspective. She's an adult now, remember, and she told the court and the committee appointed by the state that she doesn't see his past actions as a crime against her now.
Right, she's married to him, they have a child.
Precisely. And the court explicitly acknowledged the potential harm, the trauma, the instability that imprisoning him at this stage would cause not just to him, but very significantly to her and their child.
That's a complex balancing act. The law versus the current reality of her life.
It absolutely is. And it wasn't just her saying it. The West Bengal government set up an expert committee, right? With a clinical psychologist, a social scientist.
Yeah, I remember reading about that.
They met with her, assessed the situation, and their report backed her up. They actually concluded that jailing the man now would likely be more traumatic for her.
Wow. That's quite a finding from an official committee.
It is. And it clearly weighed heavily on the court. The Supreme Court made this really powerful statement, too. They said, this case is an illustration of the complete failure of our society and our legal system.
That's a heavy indictment. It suggests the problem goes way beyond just this one relationship.
It certainly implies a critique of a system that perhaps didn't protect her initially, and then maybe caused further distress through the legal process itself.
So the court's solution wasn't just not sending him to jail. They actually gave instructions to the state, didn't they?
Yes, very specific ones. They directed the West Bengal government to act as a true guardian for her and the child, ensuring a happy, healthy, and constructive life.
Which means?
Things like ongoing financial support, making sure the child gets an education, even exploring vocational training for her after she finishes her Class 10 exams. It's a shift towards support and rehabilitation rather than just pure punishment in this specific instance.
It's a very different vision of justice.
It is. And it makes us look again at the POCSO Act itself.
Yeah.
It was brought in back in 2012, and its purpose is clear. Protect kids under 18 from sexual abuse, exploitation, assault.
And it's a strong law. Gender neutral, covers a wide range of offenses from assault to, like, child pornography, and it's supposed to have child-friendly procedures. Strict penalties, too.
Definitely designed with teeth.
Oh.
And for good reason, in most cases.
Yeah.
But this case, it just throws that inherent conflict into sharp relief, doesn't it?
How so?
Well, you have the law's absolute stand. Any sexual act with a minor is a crime, period. Consent doesn't legally matter. But then you have the messiness of real life. Relationships that start maybe under dubious circumstances but evolve, become something else, involve marriage, children.
It blurs the lines.
It does. It raises that tough question.
Yeah.
How much flexibility can or should a law like POCSO have? It's like, think of a really strict school principal. The rules are there for safety, absolutely. But then you get these unique situations, maybe like kids passing notes, that don't neatly fit the standard punishment model. The Supreme Court's decision here, using Article 142, it feels like they found a little bit of wiggle room just for this very specific scenario, acknowledging those human complexities.
Okay, let's swing back to the Calcutta High Court for a second. Because their initial acquittal, and especially those remarks, that really caused a stir.
Oh, absolutely. Overturning the conviction based on consent involving a minor was problematic enough. But then adding those comments about adolescent girls needing to, quote, control their sexual urges,
Yeah.
that was just
Inappropriate.
massively inappropriate. And the Supreme Court called them out on it quite strongly. They labeled the remarks objectionable and unwarranted. They even said it violated Article 21 of the Constitution.
The right to life and personal liberty, which includes dignity.
Precisely. It's a reminder that judges need to be incredibly careful with their words. Judgments should stick to the law and facts, not personal opinions or moralizing.
And unfortunately, this isn't the first time we've seen courts face criticism for, let's say, insensitive comments, right?
Yeah. Sadly, no. There have been other instances. That Karnataka court comment about a victim falling asleep during an assault, or the Madhya Pradesh High Court suggesting Rocky tying as some kind of solution. It points to a pattern sometimes, a lack of judicial sensitivity training, perhaps.
It feels like it.
So the Supreme Court stepping in here was crucial. Not just reversing the flawed judgment, but also laying down guidelines about how judgment should be written, stick to the facts, avoid preaching. It was a necessary course correction.
And this whole saga, it really does shine a light on bigger systemic problems, doesn't it? The Supreme Court hinted at it, that the victim's trauma wasn't just from the initial act, but maybe also from how society reacted, how the legal system handled it.
Yeah, that feeling of being let down by the system itself. And when you look at the broader picture, the conviction rates, they're startlingly low.
For rape cases, it was something like 28.6% in 2021, and POCSO cases under 35%.
Right. Those numbers are worrying. It suggests issues all the way through, maybe poor initial investigations, procedural delays, maybe a lack of training for police and prosecutors on how to handle these cases sensitively.
And then there's the huge shadow of social stigma.
Huge. The fear of being blamed, shamed, ostracized. It stops so many victims from even reporting in the first place. Or it puts immense pressure on them later.
Even the fast-track courts, which were meant to speed things up for cases like these, they seem overwhelmed.
They often are. Huge backlog. Over 1 million pending cases in 2021 across various categories in these courts. And for POCSO specifically, data shows that even in fast-track courts, a huge majority, like 81%, still take between 1 and 10 years to resolve.
1 to 10 years, that's hardly fast-track.
Not really. And that delay itself can be incredibly re-traumatizing for victims and their families.
Which circles back to the Supreme Court telling the state to be a true guardian. It feels like they're saying the system needs to do more than just prosecute.
Exactly. It's about fulfilling the promise of the law. POCSO Section 19.6, the Juvenile Justice Act provisions, ensuring victims get real, tangible support, counseling, financial aid, shelter, legal help. It's about rebuilding lives, not just getting a conviction.
Okay, let's dive into that really tricky area now. Consent, teenagers, and the law. POCSO is crystal clear, right? Legally, a minor cannot consent to sex. Full stop. It's protective.
Absolutely. That principle is there to shield children from exploitation, and it's crucial. But cases like this one, they really push up against that absolute rule.
Because what do you do about relationships between teenagers that are consensual, at least in their eyes, especially if they evolve into marriage, like here?
It's incredibly difficult. The law draws a hard line, but life? Life is often fuzzier. The Delhi High Court even called teenage love a legal gray area in a different bail case. They acknowledged that sometimes these situations exist, and societal pressures can also affect what victims say later on.
So it's a tightrope walk, protecting kids versus acknowledging these complex realities.
A very fine tightrope. And it's critical to stress, this doesn't mean we should weaken POCSO. The number of reported cases, almost 40,000 in 2018 alone, an 18% jump, shows how vital this law is.
Definitely don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater.
Not at all. But it does raise the question, as some committees have suggested, whether there might be a need for very carefully crafted, nuanced exceptions, maybe considering the age difference, the specific context, perhaps for relationships involving older teens, say above 16, to avoid using a legal sledgehammer to crack what might, in rare cases, be a very different kind of nut.
It's a tough debate, and the public reaction to the Supreme Court decision showed just how divided people are, didn't it?
Oh, completely polarized. You saw it all over social media. On one side, people praising the court's compassion, focusing on the woman's current well-being and wishes.
Then on the other.
Sharp criticism. Fears that it sets a dangerous precedent, undermines POCSO. Someone on X, I think, joked about it being like a get-out-of-jail-free card.
Yeah, that captures the criticism pretty well.
And, this case really taps into deeper societal disagreements about crime, punishment, justice, even redemption, especially in a country where conviction rates for sexual assault are already so low and victim blaming is still, sadly, quite prevalent.
So some might see this as prioritizing the survivor's current life in a system that often fails them.
Potentially, yes. But again, it's so important to stress what the court itself said. This decision is specific, very specific to the unique facts here. It's not a green light for offenders to marry victims to escape jail.
Not a general rule change.
Absolutely not. It's more like, imagine a chef making a highly complex dish. For this one plate, given all the unique ingredients and circumstances, they decided on a very particular, tailored seasoning. It doesn't change the whole cookbook.
That's a good way to put it. Okay, so looking ahead, what are the takeaways? Where do we go from here? The Supreme Court didn't just make a ruling, they issued directives, right?
Yes, they did. And those directives are key. They mandated strict compliance with the Victim Support Provisions Section 19.6 of POCSO, Sections 30 to 43 of the Juvenile Justice Act. And crucially, they asked for compliance reports.
Holding the state accountable.
Exactly. Making sure that support systems mandated by law are actually functioning on the ground.
And for the woman in this specific case.
Clear instructions for ongoing financial help, ensuring her child's education. The West Bengal government apparently gave assurances about this back in October 2024, which is hopeful.
Beyond this one case, though, what needs to change systemically?
Well, based on everything we've discussed, better training is critical. Police, prosecutors, they need specialized, sensitive, trauma-informed training for handling POCSO cases. That report finding 67.5% of victims turn hostile in court, that often points back to how they were treated during the investigation or trial.
Lack of empathy, maybe procedural missteps.
Things like that. And then looking upstream, prevention. Comprehensive, age-appropriate sex education in schools is fundamental. Teaching kids about consent, boundaries, healthy relationships, that has to be part of the long-term solution.
So summing up this deep dive, we're left with this really core tension, aren't we?
We are. It's the tension between a necessary, strict law, like POCSO, designed to protect children, and the incredibly complicated, sometimes messy reality of human lives and relationships, all while trying to keep the victim's well-being absolutely central.
And just to reiterate one last time, the Supreme Court's decision here, upholding the conviction but withholding the sentence, was unique, tailored to these specific facts.
Absolutely. But what it has done is spark a really vital national conversation about child protection, yes, but also about consent, about the failings in our justice system, and about what justice truly means. Is it just punishment? Or does it have to include healing, support, rebuilding?
It definitely forces us to think. So maybe the final thought for everyone listening is this. How do we, as a society, navigate these complex adolescent relationship situations within the essential framework of child protection? And maybe more importantly, what are the truly effective ways to support survivors and actually prevent abuse in the first place?
Yeah, those are the big questions this case leaves us with. It really pushes us to look beyond just the legal statutes and consider the deep human stories involved and what genuine justice looks like for everyone affected. Definitely a lot to reflect on.